Hey guys, welcome back to another Unfiltered Gamer Kickstarter board game review. Today's game up on the tabletop is called Dawn of the Archmage. Dawn of the Archmage is made by Solar Flare Games and David Killingsworth, and it is for 2 to 4 players. In Dawn of the Archmage, you're playing as mages who have been rifed and trifled with for too long by adventurers to lay their claim on you. And due to this fact, you want to become the ultimate Archmage and imbue yourself with all the rest of the powers of all of the other Archmages. So you're going to have this kind of tournament slash battle royale where you and your opponents will all try and seize claim to the throne, so to speak, and where you're going to be summoning monsters and attacking each other with them. Now, you're going to need a certain amount of points, but to do that, you need to kill a certain amount of monsters, and they will wield you certain amounts of points based on the ones you kill. And as you do that, you're going to get soul stones and other kinds of crystals to summon them, as well as avoiding deadly traps like pitfalls, as well as fire traps and teleporters and other things across the map. It is a tile placement miniature game, and you're going to be placing the tiles out, as well as starting locations for each and every single one of the different Archmage types. And of course, there are different types like elementalists, and there's necromancers, and so on and so forth. And you're going to go on until you have managed to defeat enough monsters to lay claim to the throne and become the Archmage. Alright, so let's take a look at the components for Dawn of the Archmage. Well, first of all, you're going to get a box with it, as well as a rule book. You're going to be getting tiles, in which you're going to be placing out for all the different players in the game, as well as a retreat checking track, and everybody's going to get their own player board. There's 4 here. You've got yellow, red, green, and blue, and as well as you're going to get little different pieces here, these little cubes that represent health and die for your combat. Every single one of these is going to represent a base for your miniatures and or the little standees that I have. So for instance here, I'm just going to stick one of my guys in just like that. But in the main game, which I believe is coming up, we'll have actually miniatures, and these miniatures here are going to look like this. I've kind of gone through the leisure of putting them out on my own 3D printer, so the quality is not as outstanding, but you get a good idea, and I'm going to be using a little bit of them throughout the game so you can see what they look like and how the game's going to function. Everybody's also going to be getting player decks. There's 4 of them, 1 for each player, and they're going to either have cards that are like actions or cards that are monsters. And you're going to be drawing them throughout your turn, as well as trying to summon monsters. When you summon monsters, you're going to need different crystals, and I have them over here, as well as if your monsters get too weak, you're going to have these little weakened tokens here that represents the fact that they're not as strong as they once were, as well as pitfalls and traps that you're going to be placing on the tiles. And each and every player is going to get one of their own unique type of figures, and depending on how you back in the game is going to depend on what type of miniatures you're going to get. And that is pretty much the entire components, other than just the starting locations of Dawn of the Archmage. So for this example, we're going to set up for 3 different players. So as you see, you get the player boards over here on each of the corners, as well as the board makeup. And depending on the amount of players, is the type of board. This is our example board due to the size of the table. So we've got a T-shape going on. Every player is going to get location markers to where they're going to start spawning units. Just for example, we're going to place them over here, and this guy can go over here, and perhaps the blue will go over here, but they're all even. Also, we're going to make sure that every player has one of their crystals to start with, and all the different 5 units that we're going to be able to place at one of each different color, because on their board will represent the colors of each of the units they're going to play from their hand. Also, you're going to go ahead and set up a number of terrain markers, and then you're going to gather them throughout the terrain deck, as well as place them out for the cards. And you could kind of decide how you want to do that yourself, shuffle them up, and do it randomly. One way could be to roll a die. For instance, you could roll a 4-sided die, a 12-sided die for this, and same on over here, and then you start placing them on the board based on the location rolls. I'm just going to go ahead and set up just like this to make it quicker, though. Right here, why not? After we have all the modifiers set for the terrain and the cards out to indicate the different types of terrain, everybody's got their 3 die as well as all their markers. Then the game is about ready to begin. You're just going to start drawing your cards, and let me explain to you how a turn works. So once you've given out all the tokens, all the different crystals and all that, then you're going to determine what first player is. And you just do that in a random way that you'd like to do it. Maybe youngest or oldest, whatever like that. And then you're going to give every player 3 cards from the top of their deck. Each deck is going to be color-coded so you can see. And you just draw these 3 cards and place them in front of you. Then the first player is going to go through the 4 phases of the game. The first phase being the summoning phase. The beginning of the summoning turn, or the summoning phase, you're going to actually be able to sack creatures if you would like to, but you can only do it at the beginning of your turn. Then you can choose to summon creatures by spending crystals or soul stuff. soul stones or summoning crystals. Either way. And you're going to summon them based on level. After you do that, you can then cast any spells you have in your hand, because when you draw from your deck, it could be creatures or spells. Then you move on to the next phase, which is the movement phase. In the movement phase, you roll 2 die, and then whatever die roll you get. So, for instance, I got 6, 3, and 3. And then you're going to be able to move any of my monsters 6 spaces in any kind of way I want to. So if I have 2 monsters, I can move 1, 2, and 1, 4, or 1, 1, and 1, 5, as long as you're up to total. Or you can even do less. So if you only want to move 4 spaces, you can do that as well. After you do your movement, then you're going to go on to the combat phase. And combat's fairly simple. Whenever you step into another player's base, you need to resolve combat, as well as casting any spells. And combat works depending on the amount of the character's levels you're going to be fighting. A level 0 character is going to have 1 die. A level 1 and level 2 character is going to have 2 die, and a level 3 character will have all 3 die. You're going to roll those to determine if your monster does damage or not, and based on the amount of damage, will determine whether or not those monsters retreat, which I'll talk about during the turns. After that, you're going to go through the wrap-up phase, which is pretty easy. You can actually summon monsters once again if you would like. Then you can cast any spells you would like to as well, and simply charge 1 power crystal, which is going to help you get more monsters throughout the game. And then you're going to draw cards to signify the end of your turn and move on to the next phase, or the next player's turn. Okay, so back to the setup. Now we're going to begin playing some player turns. And we're going to start with green here and go clockwise. So he's got his 3 cards here. He's got his stone that's ready to be used. And he's going to go play something. Now he's got 3 cards in his hand. And each one of them is going to have a level on the top right-hand side, as well as health on the far left-hand side. And then basically the health at which when he gets to it, he's going to be weakened at right next to that. So this says a 7 and this is a 4. He has 7 health, and when he gets to 4, he becomes weakened, which means he's going to roll less dice in combat. So we're going to go ahead and summon something right now. That'll be the first thing, since we can't sack. So we will summon this level 1 right here. We simply go ahead and take this little crystal, this summoning crystal here, and turn it over. Place this on the board in any of the colors. We'll put it in purple right here. Take the purple stand and take one of his figures. Now all of his are going to be skeletons, so it's going to be very easy to tell which ones are his. He's then going to place them on any of these different summoning spaces here. He'll just place one right here, actually, okay? And now that he's done that, he's going to move on to the movement step, which is pretty simple. You take the 2 die, you roll the die. There's 4 right there. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now when he walked on this thing, he has to go ahead, and he's going to go ahead and read that. And that says that it costs 2 movement points to move through this space. So it would be 1, 2, and then 3, 4. He would stop there. He couldn't move any further. That's okay. He'll just do that anyway. And that's how you kind of deal with these different terrain markers. And you read them here when you get to them, or before you get to them. It's probably a smart idea. Then you're going to go see if you have combat. Is any monsters next to him or on top of him? No, he's not. You need to move into a space with the monster, so we pass that up. And he can then go to the wrap-up step, which is, does he want to summon any more monsters, cast any more spells, or charge power crystal? And he's going to do that final step, which is charge that crystal. And at the end of your turn, you're going to draw 2 cards. So he takes 2 of the cards, he takes a peek at them, more monsters, and he places them into his hand. Going over to Red's turn now, he or she is going to go ahead and look at the cards they've got. Now, interesting enough, he's got a 2, 2, and a 0. So he's going to summon a 0. Or he or she, sorry, is going to summon a 0. Place it once again on that purple marker. Take one of these. Follow it up with one of the markers, which is like a firehound representing this. Of course, in this game, it will be miniatures, but this is what I've got for now. Places it there. He's got a 0. Now, 0s don't score any points when they get killed, unfortunately for the other players. But they're also very, very weak. So they're good trumpers, trump blockers, trump attackers, that kind of stuff like that. So it didn't cost him anything. Goes through all the phases. He's going to go to his next movement step. He rolls. That's a 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And technically he should have rolled these die, but, you know, that's the idea anyway. And does his movement, no combat, does his wrap up where he gets another summoning crystal. Now you can only have 2 of these total. There's soul stones right next to it, but you can only acquire those by actually sacking creatures. And being that is, 0 creatures are good to sack. When you sack a creature, you're going to get one of those soul stones, and you can summon bigger monsters that way. After that, he's going to go to the wrap-up step, and with his and he's going to draw his 2 cards, and he is done with his turn. Moving on to blue over here. Blue has 2 spells as well as a 0 cost, so he's going to summon that 0 cost right in the purple. Rinse and repeat. Place it on one of his spots, just like that. And we'll look at the spells here. The first spell says Pulse, and it says discard this card to charge an uncharged summoning power crystal or soul stone. That's awesome. He'll do that. He'll power up the soul stone just like that. And this other one says discard this card to re-roll your attack die once or choose to add 2 to any die roll. Now when you add die points to any die roll, you can only go up to 6. You can't make a 6 turn into an 8. He's going to save that for a later use. He's then going to use his die, and he's going to move 2, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So he's so close to fighting. And now the next player will go after he charges his other stone and gets 2 more points. Now he could choose before he draws to summon something else, but he's going to wait. The one monster he got was a 3, which is pretty good, but we'll save that for a later date. And he got another ability here. Which one is this one? This one says Plasma Burst, and it says discard this card to deal 3 points of damage to a target enemy creature and 1 point of damage to all adjacent creatures. You do not gain victory points, though, if the creature is destroyed in this way, but it's a good way to remove pieces from the board. Also note, too, just as an FYI, there's no special abilities on these characters here, but they all do have special abilities, which I'll save later. You guys can look it up on the campaign to see all the different special abilities each character is going to have. Alright, so we'll continue, play another round of this. And this character is going to go. You're going to look, this is his character right here. He can now choose to summon if he wants. He's got 1 to summon with. And all of his creatures cost 2 and 3 except for this one. So he'll do this one. He'll put it in the orange slot. Pick one of these markers out. Take this. And he's going to once again summon. Whoop, just like that. So now he knows what. Now you know which of the different ones are because they have the same type as well as the base. In the actual game, it's going to be miniature bases along with the miniatures. So you'll have a good idea. They'll be color coded for you. Also to note, on some of the monster cards are abilities. Like for instance, the first monster you played says add 1+1 to a single combat die once per turn. So if he rolled a 3 on an attack, he could actually end up rolling a 4. And he can only do that once though. So he has now summoned his monster that cost 1, and he's going to turn that over. And after his summon, he's going to do his movement. So he'll take his 2 die and he's going to roll. That gives him 8. Oops, that gives him 8. So he can choose to move him how he wants. So 1. And 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Alright, he's finished his movement. He's going to do some combat. So let's see how combat works now, right? So we've got the skeleton, which is the green guy. And we've got the samurai, which happens to be the blue guy over here. And this character is at level 0. And his health is X, which means it's actually based off of its weakened value, which is 2. So he's going to get to roll 1 die. And this character over here is a level 1, which means he'll get to roll 2 die. Level 1s and 2s roll 2. So you go ahead and re-roll the die. Now, interestingly enough for this game is, so I got a 6 and a 1 and a 3. You're going to compare the first die, and if these guys were tied, this wouldn't matter. So it only matters what each player can roll. So if he had 2 dice and he rolled a 6 and a 2, he would win. If he rolled a 6 and a 6, and this guy only had a 6, you would have to re-roll. But since this 6 is bigger than this 3, it does damage to the blue monster by 3 damage, 6 minus 3. This 1 does not count for anything. In the result of a combat, if you do 1 damage to a monster, you will then have the ability to attack again if you would like after taking the damage. However, if you take more than 1 point, you must then roll on the track. And what is that track? Well, that track is this here, right here, this movement, this runaway track. So he's going to take his 3 points of damage, placing it on his creature. Oh, and his creature only had 2 health. So the creature instantly dies. Now, in this instance, he would actually be giving this guy points. But because it's such a low creature, he's going to give him nothing and just going to go to the graveyard. Had this creature had more health, though, he would simply roll a die on this track here to see where he would get away from. So he would roll, if he rolled a 2, he would have to go up 1 and suffer any consequences on the spaces. So that is a way in which you can actually unintentionally end up in some bad spots on the board. Whereas a 1 means you have to fight again, and a 6 is a choice of fighting again. But in this case, the monster goes away. Oh, and blue is going to suffer a casualty right here. So blue's going to lose his monster. Just put it right here and put it back here. And the game is going to continue going on in that fashion. Players are going to be taking turns summoning more monsters. You can summon as many as you want, and when you sacrifice monsters on your turn, so for instance, we'll just show for Red's turn here. If Red wanted to, he could sacrifice this 1 monster here. It's a 0 cost, so it's not that big of a deal. He'd sacrifice this monster at the beginning of his turn and place it back, and he would actually be able to take one of these soul stones and turn it over. And bam, now he's got more. So if he wanted to, he could summon a 3-costing monster. I don't know if he actually has one in his hand, but if he did, he could. Or perhaps he just wanted to summon 2 and a 1, right? So he could do that as well, getting rid of that 1 0. And that is the idea of how you play the game. Obviously, you can change the way the board's set up as well as the different spaces. But whoever has 8 points, I believe, is going to be the winner once you get 8 points. And the way you can get the points is simple. 0 monsters give you no points. 1 gives you 1, 2 gives you 2, and 3 gives you 3. So technically, you could win the game by killing 2 3s and a level 2 monster. And that is how you play Dawn of the Archmage. And so like I said, 8 points and you're the winner, and that is how you play the game. Now there are a couple caveats, obviously. There are going to be additional character abilities on every single character like I talked about, and they're going to be able to do different things, as well as the fact that they're not going to be standees in the actual game. You're going to get miniatures, and depending on the type of package you buy will determine the type of miniatures you're going to get, along with, I believe, the different types of like stands and positions they're going to have. Also, we didn't talk a lot about all the different locations that can happen, so I'll talk about a couple of them just so you got an idea of what kind of bad things can happen to you. First of all, there's an acid pool which says creatures entering the space take a point of damage, except for the necromancers, which is nice. And there's a necromancer you can choose from for the character space. Also, the bottomless pit is when a creature enters the space, they roll a 1d6, and on a 1 or 2, the creature is removed from the map. On a 3 or 6, the creature takes 1 point of damage, and it costs 2 movements to leave this space. The levitation field. When a creature enters the space, it stops moving. On the next turn, it can leave the space, and it costs 2 movement. And finally, Hellfire. Creatures entering this space take 1 point of damage, except for the demonic. So, as you can see, some spaces benefit others, and some spaces don't. Another cool thing is that you can force monsters to kind of run into the locations you want them to go. And if monsters cannot get to the space they are running to, they actually have to stay there and fight again. So if you're trying to run south, but there's nothing south, you stay there, and the fight continues until someone dies, if that happens over and over again. So you have to actually move to a space that actually makes sense or works. But yet, that is the game. Let me tell you what I think about Dawn of the Archmage. Alright, so where to begin? Well, first of all, this is like the second, maybe even the third game in this series. He's made a ton of games that kind of all wrap up together. The last one was Archmage Origins, which just starts off with flipping over, and it's a kind of cool matching game, right? Very simple game. And this one actually transitions into this big miniature game that involves a lot of tactical movement and different to the placing of the traps and avoiding them, as well as summoning and sacrificing and all that kind of stuff. And it actually all works out really, really well. The boards look great, the characters are good, the art looks great. I'm excited to see the miniatures, and like I said, I already printed out a couple of these miniatures here, and they're pretty cool looking, even from my printer, so I'm excited to see what they look like when they're fully done, because the miniatures are really cool, and I like the feeling of being a necromancer or pyro dude or an elementalist, and they're all mages, and they all have their own unique abilities, and you all have your own unique deck, which is really cool as well. All the different decks feel very different. So, for instance, the blue guy has a lot of 0-costing creatures, whereas yellow actually has a lot of 2, maybe 3 creatures, right? And so you're going to have stronger monsters, but those monsters have a potential to, once they die, you're helping somebody else win the game. Whereas blue's not too worried about losing all of his monsters, and he can use those monsters to sacrifice them when he needs to. Now, the weaken stat is pretty cool too. Once it hits that weakening value and you reduce your amount of die total, that works as well. So if you had 2 dice and you actually get weakened, you can only roll 1 die. So that's a cool, unique mechanic, as well as the board setup and how the board places. I think that's all cool. Now, once again, I think the rules are all pretty much still, still being done. So there's a couple things that might change throughout the way. So if I don't get this perfect by the time you get the game, well, that's probably why. The one thing I could say that was a little bit... it lengthened the game a little too much was sacrificing monsters. So if you have a really big monster like a level 3 and it has like 20 health or whatever, and you're fighting with it, on your turn, at the beginning of your turn, you can always sacrifice it, and because of that, you would negate the amount of points people can gain. So there might be some rule changes as far as that goes. I know that from what I've been hearing, that's how it might be changing, or maybe you have to get onto your portal or something like that. But as it stands, when people kill your, if they do get your 3, that's great for them. But normally you can just sacrifice it before it even dies, and you get that 1 soul, that 1 stone. However, it kind of puts you back a little bit. This is definitely a 3 or 4 player game. It's not a 2-player game. I didn't enjoy it as much as a 2-player game. I thought in 3 and then 4 it shined really bright because it was a lot more competitive and a lot more stuff going on. As well as it's not a back and forth kind of brawl where you're punching each other until the very end and you're trying to do all these tactical maneuvers. This one's just a lot crazier. People are running everywhere. Nobody wants to go in these spots, and somebody's going to end up on these nasty pools and stuff. And you can kind of make it as haphazardous as you want, or as simple and you know, not as convoluted, you know, so you have that option. But yes, Dawn of the Archmage, a very solid game that I really enjoyed, and I'm excited to see more thicker games made by Solar Flare Games because I see where they're going with this and I really like it. Alright guys, thanks for watching another Unfiltered Gamer Kickstarter board game review. If you like this video, go ahead and check out the rest of our videos here on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and comment, as well as checking out Dawn of the Archmage campaign, currently on Kickstarter by Solar Flare Games. A cool little miniature game that I think has a lot of depth and a lot of... It's simple enough for people who are going to get it, you know, and it's kind of like almost a gateway game into the really thick, heavy games. This is just in that right spot. Also, go ahead and check out our website, unfilteredgamer.com. We got tons of blog posts, giveaways, and our big Kickstarter list, as well as checking out our affiliate websites, everythingboardgames.com, The Giveaway Geek, and Devotos Gaming. Some really great sites with tons of blog posts and giveaways, even more content than even my own site. So do check them out. And once again, guys, I appreciate you guys watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.